Hi and welcome. I'm Natalia. Welcome to my channel. Here I speak about the methodology of achieving native-like fluency. I'm not a native speaker myself, and I've always been fascinated by this idea of lifelong learning. What can I become and how far can I go if I continue improving my communication skills in English? What will happen if I continue enhancing my language skills, my speaking skills, my fluency in the English language? Today I'm inviting you to join a conversation with a guest of mine. I've invited a student of mine. She is an amazing personality, a great professional, and she's fascinated by all the same ideas about learning a language. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. Please welcome Clara. Clara,
Thank
hello.
you, Natalia, for that nice intro. So,
Hi
everybody.
Yeah, it would be great if you can say a few words about yourself.
Sure, with pleasure. So, I'm Clara Feldman, and I'm a dentist, and I have been working for 20 years, and I still enjoy doing it. However, I totally accept the fact that the vast majority of people do not enjoy going to a dentist, but I am okay with that. And I really love what I do, and I find my profession really rewarding. And obviously, I'm biased, but the rewards are constant, and we're not talking about financial. We're talking about emotional, social rewards. And my profession really fuels my desire to learn more. And for the last decades, we have received so many innovations, because now we work with magnification, with 3D technologies. We use dental photography, and all this improves our treatment a lot, really. And of course, now we all are overwhelmed with advertising, and it's crucial to know how to make a right choice. And I read a lot of scientific literature, and it's crucial to know how to navigate the information.
What do you mean by you read a lot of information, and what do you mean by saying that we all need to make the right choice? Are you talking about the new equipment and the new technologies that you're using?
Yeah, of course, because we obviously we need our hands and we need our brain, but we are dentists and we need equipment and materials. And nowadays, the dental industry, it's ever-changing industry, actually. So you have to have critical thinking skills to know what to choose, how to choose, and how to navigate the information I discover. So,
what drives a modern dentist to learn English?
Well, yeah, obviously I can't speak only from myself, and but for me, English actually it has been out of question if I need to speak English, because from a young age, when I was just a first-year student, I was a member of International Association of Medical and Dental Students, and that was a great time, because we used to organize international meetings, and we had students all over the world, and we also traveled a lot. We visited lots of...
Do you mean that students from all over the world would come to Moscow for
Yeah,
these congresses?
we organize here in Moscow international meetings every year, and sometimes even twice a year. And we travel to different countries and universities, and of course the only one language to communicate was English.
Were your English skills already good back then?
I'll tell you about that. I still remember my first day in this organization. So I had to meet guys in the airport, and they were from Switzerland, and I had to, take them to the camp and help with accommodation. Of course, I did speak English, but my English at that moment was good. To tell you about the history of Moscow, about the environmental issues, stuff like this. But I had no vocabulary and no not scientific, but no communication skills. Just to talk about routine, just to discuss, simple things.
Like what? Can you give a few examples?
Yeah, I can tell you. I remember, that evening when I came back home, and you know that my mom is a teacher of English, and I came back with, you know, such a big eyes, like, Mom, how can I say, you know, what is it for, you know, ashtray or trash can or something like this.
Oh, you didn't know English words.
I did
yes?
not know that, and you know, it was essential, you know, it was crucial to know this vocabulary, and she was like, English is a discipline that could only be learned and that can't be taught. And you never paid attention. I was like, oh, come on, just give me that, you know, these 10 phrases, and that was that. And you know, so I had no
Did she?
problem. Huh?
Did she eventually?
Of course,
Of course she did.
Yeah, of course she did. Come on, I was her daughter. Yeah,
All
of course
right.
she did. And but you know, at that time, I didn't pay much attention to the quality of my speech, because I had, at that moment, actually, I had no problem with communication skills, because you know, I was young. We all were at the, you know, the same level.
Yeah.
And I had no problem with communication at that moment. But you know, back to the question of learning now in my profession, it's crucial for me to communicate, to be able to communicate on an absolutely different level, you know. I want to speak as an educated person.
Okay, that is a different level for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely, because you know, now I'm not a 20 years girl.
Okay.
You know, so
So you want to
it's
sound,
crucial,
or is
and
it,
I want
you want to sound like
I
you're...
want to sound like an educated person, and I have been always struggling, and I still have this issue with grammar. By now, English is pretty much the language of science, so so we have to accept this. And you know, if we, you know, have a look, if we think about, you know, all that brilliant clinicians and science they present their work in English. A lot of them are not English native speakers. So, you know, global scientific community has settled on English as its language.
So you mean that you look up to those professionals and professional clinicians who present their work to the world in the English language?
Yeah, of course I do. I would like to follow them, and this is actually what I do. And you know, I see now, of course, some literature is translated into Russian, but I have no, you know, reason to limit myself that much. I don't really want to read. To have, you know, this access only to something that was translated for me.
It's actually,
why would I, you know?
I understand this. So you would like to read the source rather than the interpretation of the source, right? When it comes...
Absolutely, because you know, I'm absolutely sure that translation could never be better than original.
But here I have two questions. You know, you got me thinking. So that's interesting. On the one hand, you're saying I want to sound more professional and I want to sound more educated, even though you already are educated, you already are professional.
Thank you.
And when people say that, when people explain their motivation, they always say I want to sound more professional, but they already are professional. So sometimes they're just lacking in vocabulary to express their thoughts or to show their expertise, but they already are professional. Because when you give yourself a job to sound professional, your brain thinks like you want to do something very different, because you already are professional. There's a contradiction, you know. You just want to learn to express yourself in English.
Yeah, of course. I think this is probably quite important to accept this fact, because otherwise it really, you know, prevent you to move forward in your English learning.
What do you mean? Accept what exactly?
That you are professional already.
It's a fact.
No. I mean, at the moment when I start to communicate my my ideas, my professional ideas, my professional thoughts with, you know, some of my colleagues whose level of English, you know, is more advanced.
Yeah.
You know, this is the moment when I don't feel myself confident, and of course, at that moment, you know, all my insecurities, you know, come in.
Yeah, you know, I remember when I was in high school, and we used to have Peace Corps volunteers in our school, and they would teach English classes maybe once a week or so. And I remember this feeling, because when you speak English to your English teacher, you know that she's also not a native speaker, but the moment you get to talk to a native speaker, you understand that they hear every little mistake you're making. They notice every little thing because it's their first language. So they will hear if you missed an article, they will hear if it's a wrong preposition. I remember that feeling. It actually made me feel quite insecure at first. This realization that I have to work harder because they can hear everything. If I
Yeah, of course, and I think it's even more difficult when it comes to, to the situation when you're an adult. I mean, that when you're not a student,
Yeah,
and
I
people
see what you mean.
expect from you that your speech should be clear and
And you expect
correct.
this from yourself. You have pretty
Well,
much,
of
pretty.
course.
Your bar is pretty high. You set very high standards for yourself. But I actually wanted to come back to this, to the thing that you said. So on the one hand, you're saying that you want to communicate more professionally, right? In English, you look up to those clinicians who present their work in English, and they're non-native speakers, and you understand that you can actually do that as well. But at the same time, this example with ashtrays is fascinating because a lot of people that I work with, for example, they all are very professional people. They're all very competent and they have their job for a reason because they are truly professional. But they all share one and the same thing, that the higher language skills are, the more difficult it is to talk about trivial things. You practice presenting business reports every day. You practice reading scientific literature every day. And you're okay with that. I mean, you can read that information, you can listen to a webinar about, I don't know, dentistry or new technologies and innovations. You present to the board of directors. You practice that vocabulary and that business communication style every day. But when somebody asks you, so how was your weekend? And people get like, what do I say? I've never practiced that vocabulary. And it's even harder for people to explain the things that are happening in their head right here. Their insights, their ideas, their realizations, because this is what they really don't practice, but this is what they want to learn to communicate.
Yeah, I can relate to that, for 100%, absolutely. And, that was actually my problem. And that's why some times ago I really I got stuck because first I was so concentrated that I had to improve my grammar, and I really had to do that. And actually I met a brilliant guy who he's really, I think he's gifted in teaching grammar, and he helped me a lot. But then I found out that still, I struggle with having spontaneous conversation, and this is exactly what you were talking about. I'm pretty much okay, describing, the carious lesion and what could be the consequences if we, not going to treat, and how can we achieve, healing, etc., etc. But when my colleagues, my foreign colleagues, ask me about my weekend, this was the moment when I got stuck again, and I was like, what is it? And that was actually the reason why I started to look for something else, because I understood that I can't move towards my goals, and my goals were just to be able to be spontaneous, to express my ideas, and not only about careers, because I love my work. Yeah, I really love my work, but it's just a part of my life. And when I was speaking with my colleagues, foreign friends, I saw that they actually have no problem with communicating their ideas, and with no problem with to have a spontaneous conversation, etc. And not always their vocabulary was advanced, and it wasn't the matter of advanced grammar or something. And maybe I took it as an excuse, because to be honest, I really got tired and bored with learning grammar.
Me too. I feel you here.
And so that was, to be honest, that was the other reason why I started to look for the different approach, and I started to follow some native speakers on YouTube, etc. But it also didn't, give me. I can't say it didn't give me what I was looking for.
Didn't resonate, didn't click, maybe.
I don't know. Maybe it resonated, but it didn't help. I would say.
Well, that's very precise.
I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed to listen to them, and of course, we have that I think it calls, okay, kind of neurons, you know, I'm sorry,
Neural pathways, you mean, or what?
Maybe, okay, let's keep it like this. Yeah, no, it's a new, okay, something, you know, some cells in your brain. And, you know, when you watch something, when you observe something, you can get this feeling that you can master, you can do the same.
Oh, so you kind of identify yourself
yes, so I caught myself that I was identifying myself with that native speakers.
Yeah.
But it wasn't so.
Okay.
It wasn't so.
It was rather an illusion, right?
Yeah, so I really needed to practice my, you know, let's call it communication skills. For that moment, I called it like, you know, I need to speak more.
Okay, so that's what you thought you needed.
Yeah, that's what I thought I needed. And now you can imagine how I was surprised when we met. Mm-hmm. And I thought that, okay, and I thought that I knew, you know, I had a clear idea of what I need. I need to speak, I need to improve my speech. And I was, you know, quite determined, and I was ready. I wanted to speak mm-hmm. as much as I, you know, can. And then you told me that, and I told you, if you remember, that, you know, I have a problem with having a good conversation. Mm-hmm. And you told me that, Clara, didn't you think that sometimes to have a good conversation, it could be quite helpful to make a pause and to listen? And I was like, what? Am I supposed here to learn how to listen, how to keep silent? Because at that moment for me, it was absolutely illogical, because I thought, if I want to know how to speak, I have to speak more. I mean, if I want to know if I want to, you know, master my running skills, I need to run as much as I can. I was really surprised, but, you know, somehow I decided that, well, okay, if we agreed that to that moment, I, you know, I have made a decision that, yeah, I would like to work with you. Mm-hmm. Because well, simply because I liked how you sounded, and you know, you were a kind of, you know, role model.
But at the same time, if we think about all the native speakers that you watched on YouTube, a lot of them sound a lot better than me, because they're native speakers and I'm not. You know?
Yeah. No, I mean, I even didn't have this in my mind to compare you with native speakers, but it wasn't an issue for me. But what I saw, you know, I really liked, and that's why I decided to follow. And, you know, I followed you in a while via YouTube, but then, you know, it was great that we meet on the webinar, and then I, you know, when we communicated, that was the moment I decided that, yes, I would like to work with her.
Okay. That's interesting. Actually, you know, this example got me thinking about, and you just confirmed that it was also not easy for you to talk about your weekend or all these everyday issues. And I work with a team of software engineers, and we practice small talk, which is not an easy thing to do online, especially when everyone is on mute and everybody's just waiting for the meeting to start and everybody feels awkward and uncomfortable. But if it's an internal meeting, I think it's a good idea to practice some small talk, so that we're all learning to do it in English, because in Russian we don't do it. And what do you talk about when you make small talk? Well, how was your weekend? It's a very normal question. Weather. No, we decided to talk about something personal, and he decided to bring up some personal thing. And when I asked him, so what did you do this weekend? He said, a software engineer, he said, I was working in the fields. And I imagine this southern states in the United States back in the 19th century, when people are working in the fields. I was like, what do you mean? And, you know, it's so funny. We Googled this, work in the fields, and I Googled images, and I showed him, and I said, is that what you mean that you did this weekend? He said, hell no, I didn't do that. But again, he said, my English skills are really good, and he's really advanced. But he says, day in, day out, all day long, I speak about my software projects. Exactly. I communicate with my clients. I know when the app is going to be delivered. I know how to handle difficult things, but no one ever asks me how my weekend has been, you know? Mm-hmm. And it kind of made me feel a little, even sad a little bit. But he said, this was the first word that came to my mind, you know, field. But it turns out what he wanted to say that he bought a small plot of land and he started developing his garden.
Yeah, it's
That's
pretty much different. Yeah,
That's
isn't
what
it?
he wanted to say. So he spent his weekend working developing his garden. You know, he's just starting. He just bought this plot of land, but he ended up saying it was working in the fields. And that is, it's not that it's funny. I'm not making fun of him or other people who are struggling to say that, but it just confirms your finding as well. And I think the reason is very simple: is people never practice that.
Absolutely, yeah. We just didn't have a chance to do that, to speak with whom, because otherwise, if I try to, and I really tried, to do a kind of self-study, but, I felt myself so silly, and it sounded like it was a, topic. How did I spend last summer?
Oh, you mean
We all have this at school, and, it didn't work.
you mean it felt silly to practice on your own, right?
It felt silly, and because also, I didn't know. Now I know, but at that moment, I didn't know that, that algorithm, that, the rules, because what I did, it was, quite similar to what I have done at school, just the right topic, how I spent my weekend. And it was so boring, and there was no life at this topic. And
That's okay. You brought up these algorithms and you said like you started doing something different. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? What have you started doing differently now?
everything.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Let's start somewhere.
Yeah. I think we can rephrase this in terms of what surprised me. What did not surprise me.
What surprised you the most about our work together?
The most, I would say, I didn't expect, absolutely, and actually I wasn't ready for that I will have learned so many things about myself.
What do you mean?
I mean, if someone would had told me that, I should, explore myself, explore my true self, and do some inner work to refine my English, I would have never signed up for that.
I never told you that.
You never told me that. Yeah, but the thing is that you actually interrupted all the patterns of learning English, in my opinion. And but the beauty of your approach, or the secret of your approach, if you wish, that this inner work and working on learning learning English, all this happens simultaneously.
You see,
And every time we work, because from the very beginning, when you told me, and you did tell me that my inner state, my emotional state matters, I was like, okay, so what? I didn't understand. I did not argue at that moment, but I really could not, figure out for myself what is it. I was like, okay, let's switch to grammar. Give me more vocabulary, etc., etc. Let's do some exercises. But then when we start to work, every time we work, you brought my attention, or even I see that connection, which is actually straightforward. That link is straightforward between my inner state, but between my, okay, let's call it personality, because at that moment I didn't know what is, not like I didn't want, but I didn't think about my inner state, etc., because I was overwhelmed with all the new things. So, but I started immediately. I started to see that link between my personality and the way I express myself, the way I speak
in English.
In English. And in Russian.
And in Russian as well?
In Russian. And that was quite painful moment for me. So, and I do remember the first month was really tough. And for that reason, it's really, I think that's so, awesome to say that, we have to start with 3 months. 3 months is minimum.
Yeah,
and
that's what I told
true.
you.
And
Yeah.
that's so true. And because the first month, everything was new, and it was really difficult, and really I had that feeling like all this could be achieved only with the level of calm, normally only achieved by Zen masters. Really, I realized maybe one of the first thing that I have found out about myself, that I really had zero patience, and I had this feeling like I'm moving towards my goals with the speed of a glacier, you know. And that was really so, that was hard, and that was in a way annoying. But that was because, you know, I did not, I was in love with my goals, really. And I had a, you know, quite distinct goals.
So you knew what you wanted to achieve.
I knew what I wanted, and you helped me also to figure out, you know, my goals. But you know, that was that, and I was waiting for that, you know, to achieve, and I was looking for shortcuts, and for that reason, you know, I could not enjoy the process. It was a, you know, raw stress for the first 2 months, and of course. But after third month, you know, I really, you know, felt a progress. But then I stuck.
Then you got stuck.
I got stuck, yeah. But then I got stuck, and you know, I experienced that, you know, overused word like self-sabotage. But this is exactly what I experienced.
Can we just elaborate on that for a second? It's, yeah, if you reflect on your results now, do you see why 3 months was necessary? Like, what were you able to understand after these 3 months? So, okay, you learned that you had zero patience. Okay, but did you find a way to overcome it?
Well, I don't know, maybe it's quite personal, but for me, it really worked. That 3 months, because maybe first month was, you know, what was really, it was just, I was meeting with myself. I was meeting with, you know, your tools and approach, and
just maybe for everyone to make it a little bit clearer for everyone, if you could just summarize what personal qualities or what behavioral patterns can prevent a person from really advancing their communication skills. So you said that you became aware of a lot of your own behaviors and thinking patterns, and I'm sure a lot of people have the same. If you could maybe summarize what patterns prevent people from moving on, what did you discover about yourself?
Well, what prevented me, because, you know, I can speak only for myself, first, impatience, of course. But what helps here, I can tell you, is trust. Because I really trust you. I don't know, it was my gut feeling, or it was my, you know, head. I don't know what was, or it was probably, it was all together. But I really, you know, otherwise I would not, you know, continue, you know, I would not wait for the third month. Come on, I would just quit. And so I trusted you. But at that moment, I wish I would know that and it was pretty much uncomfortable. I told you that it was quite stressful for me. But I wish I would know that, come on, if I'm trying to acquire new skills, how on earth it could be comfortable?
I think I told you about my experience with dentists. It's never comfortable, but it's worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it. And you know, this also, you know, when I you know, figure out that it was absolutely uncomfortable for me, and you know, I got stuck, and I was thinking, oh, should I continue or not, because I was really overwhelmed. Then I decided to you know, to trace, you know, my feelings. Why do I feel uncomfortable? What really caused that discomfort? And you know, when I realized that, you know, I don't feel comfortable making mistakes. Of course, the other thing that I'm together with another person who is constantly pointing out, you know, my mistakes, and I'm an adult and I have my field of expertise. Of course, this is absolutely not comfortable situation. But what really prevented me from quitting was that every time, it wasn't comfortable at all, but every time it was quite effective. After each session, I had this feeling like I have learned something. I had acquired something. So I every time I received quite tangible results.
this is at the core of my philosophy. Everything you do should give you this sense of accomplishment, because otherwise, why are you doing that?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
When people say, okay, I practice my English skills, how do you practice your English skills? I watch movies with and without subtitles 3 times a week. Okay, but what do you learn from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So every time we finish our session, I've got something, and that was great. And not only I received something, but I knew how to, to put it into practice.
Do you believe you can use all these tools that you have learned on your own?
Absolutely not. And because
not yet.
Not yet, no, not yet, obviously. But I can say that I really love all the tools you gave me. And why I'm so sure that absolutely not yet, just because I also, experienced that, feeling when after 3 months I decided to, and actually I planned that, to make a pause and to figure out what is going on and what were my results and the progress, and also I decided, I know, and now I know so many resources and tools how to do this, and I planned to use this month also to improve, etc., etc., and I ended up doing absolutely nothing.
Why did that happen? So if I understand correctly, you finished. After all this 3 months of intensive learning, you decided to take a break to try to apply everything you've learned on your own?
Yeah, because first of all these 3 months, were quite intense for me. And I didn't plan to keep up this pace. It was too intense to me. But also, yeah, I just, I don't know, for me it was quite, natural to make a pause. And I really wanted to try to try this self-study, to try to see if I can do it myself.
To try the self-study approach on your own, right?
Yeah, to see what I can do myself, because it seemed so easy when we were working. It was really so easy to do all this, but then for some reason, I don't know, for some strange reason, I decided to speed up the process. That okay. I did, because at that moment I could not accept that idea of lifelong learning.
Yes.
I was like,
that
what is it?
Sounds like forever,
Yeah, it sounds like forever. And so I decided to, and you gave me actually all the algorithm, everything. And I decided, okay, so there is an algorithm of 10 points. Okay, we will skip the first, the fourth, and the 2 last.
I don't need that in the middle.
I don't need
I
this.
just can go straight.
Okay, I'm going to pick up more advanced text, and then I felt like I don't know anything. There are so many new words, and every time I tried to do that, I got upset, and I ended up doing nothing because I didn't want to upset myself.
So you mean you couldn't cope with that?
I couldn't cope, and I do
Emotional.
remember that I was near to quit actually. But some part of me wanted to move forward, and that was the moment when I decided to pay the next month, to pay the next course with you, just to not to have this possibility to quit. And I remember how I told you, because then we resume our work, and on the first hour session I didn't tell you anything, and you gave me as usual homework, and I didn't do that, not because I had no time, because I didn't want to do that, because I realized that my life is quite intense, and I thought that I had that mindset that to achieve a success I have to find 1 hour every day to study English, and of course I did not, because it was absolutely impossible for me. And then I remember how I told you that I didn't do exercise, I didn't do a home task, because I simply don't want to. And it was really I'm so grateful to you that you did not, because I was ready that, you will ask me, okay, what's the problem, but how much time did you, spend, etc., etc. But he was like, okay, tell me exactly what did you do. All the conversation
Instead, right?
instead, yeah. And that was, I didn't expect that. And then we just, quite quickly, we have figured out what was my problem, that, I, mixed up the algorithm, the rules, etc., etc. And
You just complicated your work so much that you couldn't feel neither joy nor sense of accomplishment.
absolutely. And I remember you told me, okay, how long it took you and how many steps did you do? And said, okay, I've done, let's say, 5 steps and it took me 15 minutes. And you was like, with the face with no emotions, no judgment, nothing at all. You said, okay, so it takes you 15 minutes to feel miserable. And I was like, oh yeah, I can write 5 rules to get yourself miserable.
To get to that miserable state, right?
Absolutely, yeah, to get to that miserable state, yeah. And I was like, oh my God. And then, it was really so helpful when you helped me to establish my English routine. And I remember you told me, Clara, you have to be real with yourself. How much time you can afford to spend daily? And I was like, 15 minutes. And then I was like, she's going to quit working with me after that. I said, okay. But I said, but Natalia, I understand, I am an adult, that 15 minutes is not enough.
Where does this concept come from? Everybody wants to say, oh, I'm ready to spend 1 hour. I'm ready to spend 2 hours. But in reality, they know that they don't have 1 hour every day. They have 15 minutes max.
Well, I thought it was only me.
No.
Well, I don't know. This is such a philosophical, question.
That's a rhetorical question.
Yeah,
to
that's a
answer
rhetorical question. Maybe because we just want to be better than we are actually.
Or maybe it's just something that we hear a lot, that you need to spend at least 2 hours a day if you want to improve, or maybe because English classes last.
I think the whole process of learning, I think it has this certain connotation, and it's associated with with determination, with self-discipline, with willpower. But I really, I can't stay on track for quite a long time just using my willpower and self-discipline.
Me neither. I could never do that.
And also, I remember, I don't know if you do, your question about the joy. And when you asked me, so casually, like, but Clara, do you really enjoy the process of learning of our work? And I was like, what? Absolutely not. And you told me that, but you're supposed to enjoy it. That's the key. And that was, the changing point actually, because when you helped me to figure out what can I do in 15 minutes, and what is more important, what can I accomplish in 15 minutes, and obviously to feel joy, to feel, to receive this feeling of accomplishment. And, this was the moment when I started to enjoy the process, and when I started to be in love with my, learning journey. And I accepted that fact that, yes, it could be, I agree to have it as a lifelong, long life. How to say, well, it sounds like a tongue twister for me.
Lifelong learning.
Yeah, lifelong learning. Yeah, but actually, it's a good tongue twist, isn't it? Yeah. So that's important. Yeah,
it's easier to accept it if you know that you're going to do something every day. It's going to take you 15 minutes, and you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to see results.
I see it is the only one way actually.
Because the more you do it, the less time you need to do it. So what used to take you 40 minutes, if you continue doing it, eventually it will take you 3. I just know for a fact.
Yeah, but also, in my case, it was so important that, I can accomplish something. Not like I just start, not like I just do something, but I accomplish it.
When I complete every exercise, it is also at the core of my philosophy. I do an exercise, I make sure that I accomplish the exercise, I complete it, I complete the exercise, and then I ask myself, okay, Natalia, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much did you enjoy this work? Do you do that as well?
Honestly, not yet, but I feel really, I feel joy. And it's not a torture for me, anymore to do something. And
but I mean, this is something that you can measure, because some tasks will be boring, let's be honest. And I just measure my level of joy consistently. Okay, this task, okay, 8 or 9. On a scale from 1 to 10, how much joy did it bring me? 8, 9, 10, great. If I start noticing that some tasks don't bring me that much joy, so let's say it's a consistent 5, or it's always 6, it means I need to change something. So I use it to self-diagnose my learning process, and it means I simply need to correct the course of action. It doesn't mean I have to feel miserable. It simply means I'm either doing something that probably the content is not interesting, probably I'm doing more than I can handle, probably I'm learning at the wrong time. Maybe at the wrong time of the day, when I'm thinking about other things, when I'm thinking about work, instead of focusing on the learning process. I use it simply to correct my learning process, my learning routine.
That's why I told you that you interrupted all the patterns of learning language, because I have never ever had this idea that, I can measure the joy. I can measure how it is, interesting for me.
Because this way you can see very tangible results all the time. And when you see that you are actually making progress, you're not just enjoying the process for the sake of the process, and you're never arriving at any results.
It sounds like a hobby, yeah.
Exactly. You cannot have English as a hobby all your life. You want to see some tangible results. And by implementing this very small steps, you can see very tangible progress regularly. That helps me to stay on track. And you mentioned so many things, so many interesting things that I think many people can relate to. For example, almost everybody can agree and will agree to suffer for 3 or 4 months or longer, because they want the result that they want. And they're ready to suffer. It doesn't even cross their mind that they can enjoy the process.
Absolutely.
And people, okay, I know it's going to be tough. I know I will do it. I will stick to it, because in 4 months I'll get my certificate or whatever. It probably works if your goal is to get a certificate, but I know that I'm going to continue doing this. I know that I'm not going to quit in 4 months. So I had to figure out a way for myself to integrate it into my daily routine. How do I do it every day? How do I continue getting results? And how do I prevent self-sabotage?
Yeah, and that's why it's so important to find a right mentor. I wouldn't even call you a teacher, because for me it's quite different, notions.
Probably that's what I do, mentorship.
Mentorship. And also, what I really love is the content that you that you give to your students, and to me particularly. I mean, you're a fantastic library. And because I think that, I don't know if it is your secret or you did it unintentionally, but you really invite to read so interesting things, and to listen to such, deep things, that it really, helps to, it really helpful in that learning process, because it helps to understand, myself better.
Because I never separate English from my personality. So I add things that are interesting to me to that library, and I invite students to explore what's interesting to them, because they can also add stuff. They can suggest something that's interesting to them. When you look at English as just a discipline that is separate from your personality, you're never going to succeed at it. You can achieve a very basic level and very certain level that is always finite. When we talk about infinite learning process, it is inseparable from your personality. And your thinking patterns, as you noticed yourself, you said that you realized that your communication skills and patterns were pretty much the same in English and in Russian, right?
Yeah, but also, when you're learning foreign language, this is the moment also when all your insecurities come.
That's why, again, I'm saying it's inseparable from your personality. And I don't want people to understand that we had purely psychological sessions, because
No,
we never
it
did.
was not at all. Yeah, it was never.
We never did. These are all the insights and realizations that you arrived at yourself. We really had, like, we improved our English skills. We worked on improving our English skills.
Yeah, absolutely. But and sometimes the insights come. I come across that insights and that thoughts just during the day, and
Yeah.
when I do not do any exercises, like it was with the pauses. When I realized that when I speak Russian, it's no problem for me, and I really make pauses. It's quite natural, and I'm absolutely okay with them. But when it comes to speak English, I was really afraid to make pauses, because the fear of being judged.
So people could think you have nothing to say.
Yeah, because people might think, and I understand, that sounds so silly, but this is what I experienced, that people might think that I just can't come up with a word, or I have nothing to say. And I really, when I realized that, I was like, oh my God, what is it? And this is what really prevented me to speak, fluently, and this was one of my goals,
It's so important to understand all these things about yourself, because this is how you learn. And as I said, you probably most likely apply the same learning patterns to every other skill you learn in life. And the way you communicate in English pretty much reflects how you think, how you communicate in your first language, and how you communicate at work, everywhere else.
Yeah, and there is another thing I'm grateful to you for, that you really showed me the way to learn pretty much everything.
That's that's what works for me, and I try to share it with people. I understand that I cannot have private English classes for the rest of my life. It's just not what I can afford. And I don't think it's sustainable. I don't think it makes sense. At the same time, I want to continuously improve. And what I am passionate about is native-like fluency. Accomplish all the possible levels. When you have got all the possible certificates, this is where it begins. You already are fluent, you already are very good, but it's not enough for you. You just want to keep going, because it makes no sense to stop. And the only strategy here is to teach yourself how to continuously improve. This is why I call it the self-study exploratory approach. But this approach is so new to people, as you said.
Absolutely.
It's mind-blowing for most people. So you just need to invest some time to show a person how it works, to make sure that they understand how it works together with a coach. We do some exercises together. They understand how to work with feedback. They learn to apply it themselves. They make a million mistakes until they learn to apply it to their life, until they make sure it agrees with their personality, because everyone is very different. And they find a way to, or they find room for this routine, for this practice in their everyday routine.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, in my case, I saw results immediately.
So it was uncomfortable, but you saw results immediately.
It was uncomfortable, but the results, it was immediate result. I mean, it's like, we have discussed that, the metaphor with the cold shower really, really correlates. It has a high correlation.
I mean, it's
here.
Uncomfortable, but you see results.
Yeah, it's absolutely uncomfortable, but you have fantastic result right after.
And a visit to a dentist. It's absolutely uncomfortable in your dental chair, but you see results immediately after.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't expect that we have so many in common.
So many things in common, right? Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you very much for all your insights, for sharing your ideas. Guys, if you have any questions for Clara, please write them in the comments. If you enjoy this conversation, let us know.
Thank you. It was a joy. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.